Everybody. It says we're live there, Dieter. Live here with Dieter, and I've just gotten so used to my slides. I'm going to share right off the bat there, and then I don't have to sound so dumb making up content here because we got a great show for you tonight. At least that's my opinion. Of course, I did
And
it,
we have
so
a
you
great
would hope
special
at least.
guest as well.
So anyway, hi everybody. Welcome to another episode of Fearless Flight. Capt Ron here with Dieter, and maybe you have a fear of flying, or maybe you don't. Maybe you love to fly, or somebody you love is afraid to fly, and maybe you just like so many of us, you're fascinated by airplanes and the magic of flight. So whatever brings you here, we're glad you're in the right place, and this is where we combine our aviation expertise, a little bit of psychology, and a whole lot of heart to help you guys understand and overcome flight anxiety, or maybe just appreciate the miracle of modern aviation. And you got to admit, getting that sucker in the air and keep it in the air is pretty cool. And I'll check in with Dieter. How's things up there? Hot? Are you hot as we are down here in Arizona?
It's hot, but something more flying related. Our son is coming back. He's 19. He's been on a trip to Italy for the last week and a half, and they're making their way back tomorrow, probably just in time before Air Canada starts with some strikes. Because I think, and I don't know, you have to tell me that, Ron. We know that flight attendants only get paid when the wheels go up, right? But this was a real revelation for Canadians, I guess, that flight attendants only get paid from the time the wheels go up to the times the wheels come down. So there's this big national debate over, well, why do they have to, work for so long for free, right?
Yeah.
And so this is happening in a couple of days. So if you have any Air Canada flights, I would definitely encourage you to keep a close eye on that, because I think on the 16th they said they might do some job action there.
Yeah, and when you say wheels up, what it is, it's for our flight attendants, it's when wheels push back from the gate to when they stop. Yeah, and then if we do have delays, most of the U.S. airlines now, they get paid like one for every 3 hours that they're on duty. So they have some other compensation thing like that. And pilots are pretty much the same. We get paid for flight credit hours, and what they do is the computer averages it over time, and that's how you get paid for it. So anyway, so we'll keep abreast of that. Yeah. So anyway, this Fearless Flight Live is our weekly show that and it's the only one that I know about there where we understand, we at least pretend to understand your fear of flying, and we help you get real answers to your aviation and anxiety questions, and we try to provide some tools and strategies from aviation and mental health experts. We don't consider ourselves experts, but certainly in all this, but we use the scientific method, and we go out and find things that help people. And the thing that I've learned over the last 38 years is from you. You're the best experts I've got as to what works and what doesn't. So, and we'll have some inspiring success stories from people just like you. We got one coming up tonight, and we do this every week at 6:30. So we're glad you came, and stick with us. Quick introduction, our Birds of a Feather group invitation here. If you're not a member, we certainly encourage you to join. And whether you're starting to work on your fear flying, or you've already taken some big steps and you just want to stay connected, this group is for you. And it's
big
a safe,
shout out to Steve, actually.
What's that?
Steve Cammy. Great posts. If you haven't seen those, check them out in our Facebook group. Go Steve.
Yeah. We call it Birds of a Feather because we all flock together to lift each other up. So click the Join Now button when you go to that link and sign up, and leave a note in there. I got a question for everybody this week. Well, at least one. So my question is, if you watch it live, or if you're watching the replay, do you know what a QR code is? Dieter and I are getting ready to make a big launch this
Yeah.
new platform we have, and I was just I had a fella come over today to give me an estimate on some yard work, and he was saying that his daughter, who's about in her late 20s or so, she said, "Hey, Dad, let me do you some business or do some business cards for you." So she got these business cards and she put most of the information behind the QR code, and he's saying, "Oh geez, man, we old people, we don't do that as easily as you youngsters." So if you know what a QR code is, yes. And if you and would you prefer, when we send things out to you, would you like a QR code to summarize the information and make it easy, or would you like to see it spelled out? So that's just a little segue here that I wanted to get out there. Okay, tonight we're diving into two powerful things: a real life success story, and who genuinely had a genuine mindset shift and changed how she thought about flying. And we're going to go right into that. First up, my guest, Sonia Rees, is here. She's going to share how she went from really having a lot of anxiety, a lot of anticipatory anxiety, I think, if I remember correctly. And then I'm gonna give you just the highlights of our monthly live group coaching session coming up. And the theme this month is two selves on a plane, and I'll touch on that here in just a little bit. And I'm going to go into more detail. Last week, I briefed you on the fact that the NTSB had held their hearings on the January 29 DCA mid-air collision. And tonight, I'm going to do a little bit more in depth there to help show you what we learn and why the aviation industry, ironically, is so safe, despite the fact that we still have accidents. So, I want you to meet Sonia. She's literally a shining example of courage in action. And once she had quite a bit of anticipatory anxiety, and I hope she touches on just some of the other parts of her life, because she's an inspiration to me. I couldn't believe all the things she's been through and how it showed up in fear of flying and all that. But her story is a reminder that you can overcome flight anxiety. And it's not necessarily about never feeling nervous, but it's about taking back your power one flight at a time. And I'm really proud to have her in the community, inspiring others to believe that change is possible. So let me stop the share and let you in. Hey, Sonia, nice to have you.
Hey, thanks for inviting me.
Yeah. So, we were touching on this. If you can just give people a little snapshot about your background, and how we met and how long ago. You reminded me at the beginning. Holy moly.
Yeah, well, I was seeing a therapist, and I told him about my fear of flying. He said, "I think there's a guy that does some free stuff in Phoenix, and I happen to find you somehow, some way."
Yeah.
And it was harder in those days because this was over 20 years ago, the first time I found you. When I was just beginning to struggle with it, and I white knuckled it for several years, and it mostly came from a divorce and lack of control, and I was flying a lot at that same time for work, and so that it reared its ugly head. I white knuckled it for a while, took too much anti-anxiety pills. I later found out that I could have died on the amount I was taking, and I'm not kidding. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, we're glad you didn't.
Yeah, me too. Me too. And then, I white knuckled it for a while. Then this part of the story sounds bad, but it gets better. So my son tried to commit suicide. I took him to a mental health hospital in Reno. And then when I flew home, I said, "I'm never flying again."
Wow.
That my mom went and got him. And he's a licensed psychotherapist now, doing great things. So he's okay.
Yeah, I was going to say,
yeah. Everything's good now. But I didn't fly at all for 9 years. Not one bit, nowhere. And then I was going to have a grandbaby, and my daughter was living in Chicago. And that's when I basically had to revisit everything and come back to you.
I remember that. And so that was kind of like your big why, was you wanted to have the freedom to go visit her. And so does she she still live in Chicago?
No, she lives in Prescott now, because I said, "I can't help you if you live in Chicago."
There you go.
Yeah, but before that, she was living in LA, and so I would just drive. Had she not moved to Chicago and got pregnant in Chicago, I probably would still be driving everywhere, but I had a real solid reason. And I don't know if you remember, then the baby was going to come a couple weeks early, and so we had to pull everything forward. And in the middle of all that, the house flooded. I don't know if you remember that part, where the house completely flooded while I'm trying to get my life.
I remember that because I accessed you because a couple of years ago, which I still haven't finished my own water repair here. It's been a nightmare. So anyway,
I worked with you. I did some of my own stuff with a therapist. That's how I realized this all came from feeling a lack of control, going through a divorce, going through things with my son, and just had to. Well, I didn't have to. I chose to. I chose to get it under control, and I kept doing it. Like, what I found is if you keep doing it, like at first I flew every month for maybe the first 5 months.
Yeah.
Even if it was just to San Diego, I went with you for a just to, because once you do it and you feel confident, you get more confidence, and it just snowballs and snowballs.
It's really important. It is really important. And when you become a pilot, the most important thing is to fly after you get your initial license, even if it's just a light airplane pilot. And I tell people when they ask me for this kind of information, I just say, for most people, you get around 50, 60 hours, you're going to get your license, but you want to be able to have the resources to fly about 100 hours and stuff. And because it's the same process or a similar process is what people like you go through with flight anxiety, and you want to keep your foot in the game or your body in the game there. So anyway, what was that like leading up to flying? When would you start to notice it, and how would it manifest your
well, I mean, I had the anticipatory anxiety. That's when I would, things that we had talked about, I would journal and actually tell myself, hey, you're being really brave by even thinking about doing this. Like, you don't have to do this. Like, you're choosing to do this. You're doing a good thing for your family. I did a lot of journaling. I did the harmonizer. I fell asleep to that thing. I don't know how many times, but I would do it in advance. So I kind of had to prep. I couldn't just get on the plane and be ready to go. Now I can do that a little bit more. I did the whole thing where I pre-boarded. I talked to the pilots. I made sure I had paper and pen if I was going to need to journal while I was on the flight. The harmonizers downloaded to my phone, all that type of thing. I was careful about how much coffee I drank in the morning. I made sure to work out, just to get
so a real holistic approach to it. So you mentioned journaling, and I think journaling is one of the most important things for people to do, to write down what's going through their mind, because certainly if I'm coaching them, I really like that because it gives us more information to work with. But how describe how you journaled, was it, I think a lot of people get caught up in thinking you got to write your memoir, it's got to be things like that.
No, I would just try to do at that moment, like, how am I feeling? What am I feeling right now? I'm anxious. I would say I'm anxious, and that's okay. I'm anxious, and I'm going to live through it. Like, this is fine. This is all okay. I'm basically just telling myself I'm okay. But it was really about like that. What am I feeling in that moment right there? In some ways, it's like putting it there and leaving it there.
Nice. And was there a turning point or a place where you saw a measurable shift in your attitude?
It actually, it was something that I didn't realize until I looked back. And it was recently, because now it's been almost 4 years that I started flying again. And I've gone to Mexico City, Madrid, Honolulu, New York, Chicago. I've gone a lot of places in that amount of time. And I told my husband, I said, you know what? I don't feel that feeling ahead of time anymore. Like, I know sometimes I'll get anxious on the flight. Sometimes, not even all the time. But I also know that I can work through it and I'll be okay.
That's cool. And so the anticipatory anxiety is greatly reduced, it sounds like.
Well, I would say it's next to nothing. Unless I think there's a big storm or something coming through. Like, if I'm going to go maybe the tornado alley during the season, something like that. But just on a regular day, now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's really important because when I talk to people, I'd say 85, 90, 95% of the real troublesome stuff that people are bothered with is really just the anticipation. They're just thinking about what's it going to be like in there? You know, they think about a bad experience, or they think about an experience they don't even know about. And they just think about it. Can't get off the damn airplane. I feel trapped. What's it going to be like? But it's the thoughts about that they project into, rather than, like you said, the situational anxiety when you get up there, when you do have some turbulence or something like that, and you notice it. But the situational turbulence usually passes rather quickly. And so it's and that this month that we're going to talk about that in detail. The two types of memories we have. One we have a memory of the experience when we're in it, and the other one is what we remember of that experience afterwards. And that's the one that usually shoots people in the foot, is they remember that, you know, that flight could have been 6 hours of pretty good flying, but they had 2 minutes of stark terror with turbulence, and that's what they'll carry away from, you know, like that. And
But
and
I
that
think
happens.
now it's flipped for me. So if
Yeah.
I have 2 minutes of anxiety on the plane, I remember the 4.5 hours of,
Yeah.
of,
Yeah.
of good part. Then I was like, oh, that was only 2 minutes. I was fine.
Yeah. And do you, I'm just, this is a question just came to me. Do you think that's, you've been helped by journaling about that? To, you know, when you write down, you know, make a note of when you're feeling something, and as opposed to, you know.
Definitely in the beginning, for sure. I will say I hit turbulence coming back from New York, and I was on a plane with my mom and my little brother, but I
Yeah.
was by myself. Doesn't matter why. And I didn't, you know, I kind of got cocky. I didn't have a pen and paper. I didn't, and I was like, what do I do? Like,
Yeah.
the only thing I could do, because my Spanish isn't good, was I tried to write things in Spanish on my phone.
Oh,
I was
cool.
feeling. Instead, I was like, what can I do? How do I
Yeah.
get around this? But what that flight taught me, that was in May, was still carry all my tools with me. Like, make
Sure.
sure the harmonizer's on my phone, make sure I have something to write with, you know, just
Yeah.
different, make sure I'm preparing before I go. Just in case. It's not, none of it's gonna hurt me.
Yeah. And that was the next thing, was just about the tools and things like pre-boarding, meeting the pilots, harmonizer, and you know, those are the things that you did, right? And you did them reliably and religiously, if I remember.
And after a while I stopped meeting the pilots, but knowing that I'm going to fly by myself this weekend, I'm gonna pre-board, I'm gonna meet the pilots, and they've always been nice to me.
Sure.
And that picture that you showed, they let me sit in the captain's seat.
Right.
And people that don't know me actually think I fly.
Yeah,
I'm a
that's
pilot.
funny. That's funny. That's funny. Yeah, I know most of the guys that I worked with, you know, by the time you board, especially if you pre-board, we've got most of the pre-flight checks done up there. We're pretty much waiting for the load to form up and go. And so it's really not that big a deal to have a passenger come up, and you know, and we get a lot of kids, you know, especially when we've got unaccompanied minors and stuff that are struggling and stuff. The flight attendants will bring them up and give them a little bit of a break there. So I really encourage you. Yeah.
They'll tell me stuff too that they might not say over the overhead. They'll say, oh, well, we're going to have like 20 minutes about an hour in that might be a little bumpy.
Yeah.
And I don't hear them say that to the group,
Right.
just to me. And that's helpful. If I know an hour out, we might hit some bumps. That's helpful to me, just to be like mentally prepared. But yeah, you know, they're always nice, and it does calm me down because I know who's up there, and you know, still don't have any control over it, but at least I feel like I established some kind of relationship.
Yeah. And I jokingly say to people, you know, that's your opportunity to train your pilots, and let you know, and remind them that not everybody in the back has flown like they do and is comfortable with it. And in particular, I tell them to remind them to, if you have information, I would value it if you share it with us, you know, as long appropriate, because the more you tell me, the more it takes out of my imagination and stuff. So I really encourage it. The question about, did you ever think about giving up, or what kept you moving forward? And obviously you're wanting to see your granddaughter was a big motivator.
And and then they lived there for a little while after she was born. But yeah, it was you know, once I started, I wasn't going to stop. That was, you know, I'm already on the path. I'm not going to not do it now. But, you know, but once you start, it's easy. You have momentum. It's easier to keep going. It was the starting that was hard, especially because I made a deal with myself. I told myself I would never fly again. Like, to me, that was a commitment. Like, I'm not going to do it now. I said I wouldn't, you know, but I had to go and say it's okay to change your mind.
Yeah, yeah. And do you find that this influences other areas of your life? The kinds of things that you've learned about yourself, you know, and overcoming your anxiety? Does it make
Well,
you?
yeah. I mean, things that might be obvious to other people that I didn't realize that you know what, I've gone through a lot of hard things, and flying is not the hardest thing that I've been through.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and actually flying is a luxury. Like, I mean, I'm happy that I even have the option to be afraid to fly.
Yeah,
that's not, that the rest of the world's not like that. So
and you've shared a lot of your personal experiences with me, and I mean, you are really somebody that I really admire, and somebody who really says, did it, just keep on trucking. And that's why I tell people, do not quit, don't give up, because it is mind over matter, but it takes time to do that for most people.
Right. And the other thing, I had to realize it wasn't going to be easy. And you have to do it yourself. Like, Captain Ron, you sat right next to me, but I still had to do it myself.
That's right. Yeah.
And it's okay that it's hard, and it's okay that you feel uncomfortable, you know, and if you realize that in advance, this is not going to be perfect. It's not going to be butterflies and balloons the whole time. Okay, I can live through that. I've lived through a lot of things.
Yeah. So out there, when you mentioned anticipatory anxiety and the hard part getting started, can you say to people out there that, because there's people right now watching and will watch, are saying, man, that's not me. She's, you know, nah, she wasn't as bad off as I was.
Wow. And you know what? And when I was in your class and I saw people talk, I said the same thing. Or they're braver than me, they're smarter than me, they're better than me. They don't have it as bad as I do. They haven't gone through the things I have. Look, I'm a person like everybody else living in the same world. It's just, you just have to do it. And I think the minute you can find that switch in your brain where you're saying, I'm going to do this and I'm not going to let something stop me, you'll be okay. And you can go as fast as slow as you want to.
Yeah.
I saw Captain Ron the first time, it took 15 years, I think, between times to actually get this under control. 15 years. It's okay.
Yeah. I hear you. What, and you mentioned you're still flying actively. What's the next flight you got coming up?
So we're taking my husband's daughter to Lincoln, Nebraska.
Oh, that's right.
We're driving. He's driving back. I'm flying back by myself. So I have flown a couple of times by myself, but I'm like, okay, let's think about all the things that I need to do in advance. I confirmed on my new phone that the harmonizer is there. I'm going to talk to the pilots. There's paper and pen in my backpack, all the things, you know. So it's just basics, you know. All the same things are all the same things. It doesn't change from
you mentioned that when we first talked here about, you know, about just going back and doing the basic things that you did, and I think that's really fundamental, and I think that's really important for people who don't fly as much as you do, you know, to remember. You know, I tell people, you don't have to do the same stuff 24/7 365 a year. Just when you get within a month or 3 weeks or something before your flight, typically, you know, that's when you want to kind of go back to your notes, maybe do a little journaling and review and stuff like that. So
Ron, let me just jump in here. First of all, the overwhelming majority of our audience knows how to use QR codes and uses them regularly. But more importantly, Katie wants to know, how exactly do you request pre-boarding and meet the pilots and get to meet the pilots? So if you could just explain, because Sonia went over it fairly quickly, and I guess it's been a while since we've talked about that on the show.
Yeah. So. Okay. So I'll let you, if you want, Sonia, I'll let you if you want, or I can help you.
Okay. You know. And if I get the verbiage wrong, you chime in. So basically you go to the gate, to who's ever manning the gate with your ticket, and you say, hi, my name is Sonia. I have a medical condition. All you say is medical condition because they're not allowed to ask you what it is. And believe me, a fear of flying is a medical condition. I have a medical condition and I need a special seat. Or sometimes you can say, I need a pre-board. And sometimes they'll ask you, well, do you need assistance? Like they need to know.
Let me just clarify real quick, because for the majority of airlines where they pre-assign you a seat, what I recommend is saying, I need extra time boarding or, pre-boarding, like you said. Southwest, which apparently is going to go out the window in January, I think. But right as of still, they don't pre-assign. So the only thing you say differently with them is, I need a special seat. So a special seat on Southwest, but anybody who you got a pre-assigned seat with, you just say, I need extra time boarding, or I need to pre-board for my medical condition. So anyway, okay.
And then they'll ask you, well, do you need, like, they want to know if they need to go to a wheelchair or something. And you say, no, I don't need assistance. I just need extra time.
Exactly. They'll ask you if you need extra assistance, right?
Right. So then when you get on the plane, then you can tell it's usually a flight attendant standing there right when you get there. You say, hi, my name is Sonia. I have a fear of flying. Is it okay if I talk to the pilots? And they poke their head in and they come back and go, yeah, go on in.
Yeah.
And then I tell the pilots, hey, my name is Sonia. Sometimes I can get anxious when I fly. Is there anything you can tell me that will help? And they can say all kinds of things, and all of it has been interesting.
Yeah.
And like I said, they're all super nice, and it's really easy to pre-board. It's and they'll talk to you and they'll tell you all kinds of things. I know on Southwest, they told me, well, you know what? We only have one kind of plane and every single person is trained on that one kind of plane. So you don't have to be afraid, like, okay. One time I told them I just got off a cruise and the pilot said, I would never go on a cruise. That seems scary.
Yeah, and that's funny. And I think that when you approach them with a not overpowering, but a little bit of enthusiasm, especially with the flight attendant, because some of the flight attendants maybe should have quit, and are getting kind of grumpy or whatever. But I really encourage people not to be discouraged, even if you do have a bad one. But I think if you approach them in a way, say, I'm really nervous about flying, and it really helps if I can meet the crew, and meet the pilots, and I think you can bridge that gap with most people out there. A lot of them, unfortunately, they have no clue. They have no clue what it's like for people who have a fear of flying.
Right, because they don't have it.
Yeah. I've been meaning to ask Dieter every week. Dieter, do they do that in Canada on the Canadian flights? Do they board early like that? Do they have any equivalent to the Americans with Disabilities Act?
Yeah, there is a Canadian equivalent.
Okay.
I actually, I'm gonna out myself here. I actually tried it out.
Okay.
Because
cool.
I was curious, right? We always give that advice to the domestic audience in the US. And so I figured one time, well, I want to try this out. And I think the airline was WestJet in that particular. Yeah, absolutely. And they can't ask you what your medical condition is. They just, they were very, very supportive, very helpful. I mean, it was assigned seating. So all I asked was to have a little extra time boarding, and then they get you into the early group. And yeah, it was a very seamless, easy experience.
Cool. Thanks. And I want to thank you again, Sonia, for making yourself available in this. Are you in the Fearless, in the Birds of a Feather group?
On Facebook?
In Facebook.
Yeah.
I don't have Facebook, so no.
Oh, okay. Obviously, because sometimes I'll say, is there a way to get a hold of it? If somebody want to get a hold of you and ask something,
or I'm on LinkedIn. A lot of people are on LinkedIn. You can see my name
LinkedIn.
right there. So that's my full name.
Okay.
Nobody else has that name, so.
Okay. All right. Yeah, because I don't want to violate your privacy or anything like that. But they can go through us too.
They can go through us, and if somebody really wants to talk, I got no problem talking to somebody on the phone, none whatsoever. I'll absolutely help.
Thanks. I appreciate that. Well, thanks. I'd love to have you stay on, and we're going to talk about some other stuff here, and then we're going to wind it up and And so if you're still here at the end, I want to thank you again for coming on.
All right. Thank you. I'm going to stay on so I can get a refresher.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Sonia,
Thank you.
Robert wants you to know that great job facing your fears, and you were very inspirational. So
Oh, I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad
Thank
I'm
you
able
for
to help
that.
somebody.
yeah,
Thank you.
okay.
Okay, so let's go back to the other slides there. Just a little bit of hopefully inspiration for those of you who are on the edge about joining our Fearless Flyer Club, or if you're actively enrolled in the Clear for Takeoff 201 course, you get 2 free monthly webinars. And Dieter and I have been talking, and we've got a special launch of the membership that we're going to a discount for people who want to belong for a year. And we really, what we're really promoting is people to stay engaged until you absolutely positively don't need to do it anymore. And what we're going to do is we're going to cut the price in half for annual memberships, and we'll put that out afterwards. We've got an email that we're going to launch on that. But go ahead, Dieter.
Yeah, I just want to say, because that sometimes disappears. With that, you're gonna get free access to 12 of these live, intimate, interactive, and supportive monthly group coaching webinars. And not just that, you also get access to our library of the last 3 years of these webinars. So, I mean, there is just a treasure trove of really inspirational content there, and you are able to join us live, for 12 months. That's really amazing. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Rob.
Yeah, and we really, staying connected is really the key, I think, for a lot of people. We saw that with the pandemic. A lot of people just dropped out when the pandemic hit, and flying was really difficult during those times. And we had a lot of past followers come back. And so the way to stay in this, as Sonia pointed out, is to stay connected and keep doing a little bit, working on yourself there. It's really the way to do this. And what we're going to talk about this month, I think, is really interesting. This came from a fella named Daniel Kahneman, who talks about it. And I have a question here. Have you ever had a flight where the memory of it felt so much worse than what actually happened? Well, you may not be to the point where you thought that it felt worse than what really happened, but that's part of it. And maybe days, weeks, or even years later, that memory still makes you nervous, even before you step on a plane again. And it's not your imagination, believe it or not. It's your brain that's doing that. Specifically, something called your remembering self, taking control of the story. And we know as human beings, we're creatures of narrative. There isn't anything that we experience that we don't make an interpretation of or tell ourselves the story. And fear of flying is one of the best and the worst manifestations of that, because that's what keeps people stuck in anticipatory anxiety, the stories that they tell themselves, often about past experience in that. And if you don't know how to work with it, these memories can keep you grounded. And that's exactly what we're tackling in this month's live monthly group coaching webinar. And it's called Two Selves on a Plane, How Memory Shapes Our Fear of Flying. And we'll talk about your experiencing self versus your remembering self, and how they see the same thing, the same experience, quite differently, and why your brain can distort what actually happened in the air. And we'll give you some tools that we always try to do that you can use to rewrite that narrative so your memories work for you and not against you. So that's coming up on August 21st. I believe that's a week from this Thursday night, 6:30 p.m. Pacific, 9:30 p.m. Eastern. This is just some slides that I've extracted from that. Two Selves on a Plane, how memory shapes our fear of flying. And this is what it's about. It's about, why does one flight scare you for years? We're going to look at that, and we're going to look at why it matters to a fearful flyer, why it matters so much, and what you walk away with. We're gonna help you get a fresh understanding of your past flight experiences, for those of you who had bad experiences, give you some tools to help rewire that part of your brain that has those memories, and help you make a powerful shift in how you view your upcoming flights. And of course, there'll be not one, but two guided visualizations that will be in the same theme of the thing there. So, okay. Any other questions right now, Dieter? If not, we'll move in.
No.
Okay.
Katie just said thank you for explaining the whole pre-boarding. That's super helpful. She's planning her first flight in many years next month, so that's perfect. Definitely.
And you heard it from Sonia. We can't
Yes.
overvalue the experience of pre-boarding. It's just people, didn't think you could do it. You think nobody would be up there in the cockpit post 9/11. Not true. And usually the folks up there, having been one of those folks for many years, we get bored. It's fun to talk to people. It connects me to the people that I have in back of the airplane. So you're doing them a favor as well. Last week I showed a slide, just a quick preview of this with the 7 findings from that midair collision. And I'm not doing this to belabor what happened, the bad stuff. I want to take you through a process that when we have tragic events like this, what happens as a result of what the NTSB finds throughout that. So this is based on the final report. There was a hearing on January 20, or 3 days last week, about the January 29th midair collision over DC. And I've used this, I've paired this up with what you've seen before, and that is the Swiss cheese model of safety systems management. And you'll get more about that in here. And as we've seen, the January 29th midair collision over Washington was not the result of one bad decision or a single point of failure. And that's why the news sometimes does a disservice, because they'll get stuck on one thing or another. President Trump, in my estimation, not a great judgment when he said it was related to DEI initially, and that because that was in the current events and stuff like that, had nothing to do with DEI. And so tonight we're going to go through a little bit more in detail, maybe give you a little bit of a yardstick, so how you can do some of this for yourself in future accidents and incidents. So this accident was an alignment of multiple small weaknesses, which are represented by the holes in each of these slices of Swiss cheese up there. And these are policy gaps, they're human factor conditions, technical issues, environmental challenges. All of that came together and overcame the normal safeguards of our aviation system. And this Swiss cheese model helps us see that every layer of safety has imperfections. It's not that things won't go wrong. It's how do you manage the industry so that they don't go wrong to the extent that they all line up, as symbolized by that arrow going through there, or that dotted line, and you end up with an accident. And what keeps us safe day by day is the fact that those imperfections rarely align. And when they do, as was the case in this one, the outcome can be tragic, and nobody would deny that. So it's important to remember that this event is an outlier. And all you have to do is look at the news before and the news after and see how big the gap was between accidents. This was the first fatal crash in the United States in over 15 years, as kind of a reminder of that. We had Arnold Barnett, who specializes in aviation safety and the odds of being hurt or killed on an airplane crash. And he told me last that the odds in the United States now are 1 in 100 million that you'll die in an airplane crash. And that's so large as to not even be digestible by the human brain anymore. Okay, so this investigation is a powerful reminder that the layers that Swiss cheese represents need constant care through constantly updating our policies, better technology, improving our training, and being proactive when it comes to risk management. And ultimately, aviation safety is about learning. Every accident is a lesson, and each lesson strengthens the system. And that is why aviation safety has achieved the milestones that it has and is the safest way to travel on the planet. And if we take these findings seriously and address the gaps, and it's not much we can do. We're relying on the organizations like the FAA to do this. But we not only honor those affected by the incident, but we also make the skies safer for you and I. And so So let's keep the conversation going and let's talk about some of these. So the Swiss cheese model that I touched on before explains that accidents occur when multiple layers of defense, and that's what these hazards are. Each slice of Swiss cheese, assumingly, has random placed holes in it, so that if you were shoot a laser through one hole on this, it gets blocked somewhere through there, and it doesn't, because when it goes all the way through and emerges on the other side, then that's when symbolically an accident happens. And when these hazards pass through all the defenses, it does lead to incidents and accidents. And this analysis maps the 7 NTSB findings to this Swiss cheese model here. So before we dive into this, let's talk a little bit about the framework that we're using, and that is that Swiss cheese model. And as I said, when I review, every one of these represents a layer of defense. So it could be flight training. It could be pilot selection and hiring. It could be maintenance. It could be FAA policies. It could be aircraft manufacturing, some of the tech safeguards in there. It could be technology. It could be a whole bunch of things in there, and those represent the hazards. So the first finding that they came out with was the FAA rejected proposals. These are proposals that people had made to reroute helicopters away from the busy airspace, which caused the conflict on the approach to runway 33, landing to the northwest in Washington National Airport. And for years, there had been proposals to reroute these helicopters away from some of the busiest and most complex airspace in the Washington, D.C. area, not just in the nation, but in the Washington, D.C. area. And these proposals were aimed to create a buffer, a bigger buffer between slower, more maneuverable helicopters, which was one of the accident vehicles, and fast-moving fixed-wing aircraft in dense traffic areas, like on final approach there to runway 33. But these proposals were repeatedly rejected. And in the Swiss cheese model, this represents a hole in the policy and a strategic planning layer. And that layer was supposed to provide the broad structural safeguards that reduce the likelihood of hazardous encounters in the first place. And without these changes, high-risk helicopter operations, they had these operations they did regularly, run up and down the Potomac River, and some of them were based in operational considerations in case we went through a 9/11 situation again. But they reduce that layer is supposed to reduce the likelihood of that. But without those changes, these operations continue to share congested corridors with other aircraft, and hence they were in the wrong place at the wrong time. And this left the pilots and the controllers with a reduced margin for error. And we'll talk about how that played out here. And what it does, when one layer is reduced with a margin for error, it pushes a lot more responsibility on other layers to prevent things like collisions like this. And when those other layers also have weaknesses, which we'll see in the next findings, the policy level gap became one of several aligned holes that allowed this thing to occur. So the first thing that the FAA took to task was the fact that the FAA had somebody making proposals. And I believe one of the official reasons was that they said it was too political. So there you go. Okay. Now, the second finding was that air traffic control at DCA, these are the guys in the tower, was operating at unsafe capacity levels. This is spelled out by the NTSB in their findings. And on this layer of the Swiss cheese model, we're looking at resource management. We're looking at basically how well people, time, and tools are allocated in a high pressure environment, which is what tower operations are like at an airport facility like Washington, D.C. during peak periods of traffic. Now, it's not like that all the time, but the airlines flex back and forth. So they'll have a bunch of airplanes meet at an airport like DCA, and then they'll all take off and depart. And then they'll come back with another slew of flights there. Kind of like 6, 7, 8, 9, sometimes 10 rush hours during the day. And when this layer develops a hole out of the Swiss cheese, it usually means overload. Now, was that the single cause of this? No. The fact that they had one controller that was doing two functions worked fine up until this particular alignment of the first one we talked about, when they were running traffic down the coast, and they should not have been doing that. So what that did is it put them in a higher demand on too fewer resources, and it reduces the resilience or the staying power that those people had up there in the tower. And in this case, that hole lined up with other weaknesses in the system, like we talked about on the first one. And one thing you have to remember in aviation safety, it's rarely one single cause. I mean, I can't think of an accident that had one single cause. It's a bunch of smaller issues that line up such that an error in each of these consecutively allows it to slip all the way through the defenses. The third finding, controller managing both aircraft admitted feeling overwhelmed. So the guy, building on the second cause there, where they were understaffed in that tower there, again, that in and of itself isn't enough to tip the scale. But this controller managing both aircraft, he admitted that when he was tasked with the helicopter and the RJ, he was overwhelmed. And it takes us, our finding takes us, this finding takes us from the system level to the individual level. And this controller, who was responsible for both the Army Black Hawk helicopter and the incoming RJ American type, he later admitted to feeling overwhelmed during the event. And that's what we do as people. We get overwhelmed, but we keep functioning. And, you know, and he may have had other options that he could have done, but he had to recognize that in advance. So we can imagine that not only was he overwhelmed, but he needed to have maybe a little bit of an education in his own self-awareness to say, okay, I got to do something different because this is weighing heavily on me. Air traffic controllers in general are trained to handle high stress. That's part of the training, the basic training in Oklahoma City. It's also a big part of the on-the-job training that extends 2, 3, 4, 5 years after the training in Oklahoma City when they get to the facility in which they're going to work. They get complex scenarios, but they're still human. And when the workload is intense and continuous, your ability to think cognitively breaks down. And this can reduce to situational awareness, or it reduces your situational awareness, and you lose track of things, and you have slower reaction times, and you have difficulty prioritizing tasks. Just playing a card game, you know what that's kind of like. You're trying to look at the hands in the cards in your hand, and you're trying to look at the cards out in front of you, and you're trying to make decisions. Well, controlling traffic is somewhat like that, only worse. And when they get to task saturation, it's a dangerous state in overwhelm. And that means that the addition of one more airplane or one more responsibility, whether you're a pilot, a controller, or ground crew, it means that you're working in the survival mode, and you're reacting to the most immediate problem rather than managing the whole picture. And that's what was a factor in this, according to the NTSB. And in this case, the controller's sense of overload didn't cause the accident by itself. Again, it was just one of the holes in the Swiss cheese, but it removed one other more protective layer. So now we've got 3 layers that have been compromised. And when you combine this with the capacity overload that we discussed in the previous finding, and the technical and the procedure gaps that we'll see coming up here, it became another aligned weakness. So now we got 3 holes that are lining up and allows the hazard to get this far in the process. This was an interesting, when I found it, purely from my experience as a pilot. They found that on this particular type of aircraft, the Black Hawk helicopter, they had a critical bit of instrumentation, that was the altimeter. And they found that the Black Hawks, in this case, the altimeter was off by as much as 100 feet. And you say, by as much as, yeah, that means the higher you go, maybe the greater the error. But and that's not just a small error. It could be it's a small error if I'm at 35,000 and the airplane eases up to 35,100. But it's a huge error when you're supposed to stay below 100 feet when you're passing on that corridor, which was assigned. And this is extraordinary. And again, this was a gap that can make a difference between a safe separation, and it did, and the primary reference for and a potential conflict in crowded airspace, which is what they were in. We as pilots rely on altimeters as our primary reference for altitude, especially when you're getting close to the ground, and especially when visual cues are limited or non-existent. And if the altimeter reading is wrong, your mental picture, the picture you have in your mind of where you are in relation to other aircraft in the planet Earth is also wrong. And in this Swiss cheese model, once again, this is a hole, again, in a technical equipment error. So this wasn't human factored. This was a breakdown in a piece of equipment or a flaw in a piece of equipment. And normally, technology is one of the most sound layers that we have in the system, because technology provides accurate, reliable data in case of this altimeter that help them require spacing. But here, the faulty readings weaken that barrier, and so they were much closer, obviously too close, but they were much closer than what they even anticipated there. And on its own, again, this kind of error might be caught by visual confirmation or by ATC radar because the airplanes now report back what their actual altitude is. So this would show up on a controller's ADS-B, which we're going to talk about a little bit later, and we'll see another problem that came up as a result of this. Finding 5, okay, and this is where we get ADS-B, and ADS-B is called Automatic Dependent Surveillance Broadcast. So this is a system that's interactive between the airplanes and the radar that allows information to pass back and forth, that gives us much more precision locating of airplanes in real time. It allows aircraft to broadcast their position, and that's through something called ADS-B out tracking, and receive other aircraft positions, and that's called ADS-B in tracking in real time. And in this case, the helicopter's ADS-B out was in op, meaning that it was not working and was not transmitting its position to others. So the controller, as a last measure, even though he got visual confirmation from the helicopter pilots that they saw the traffic, even though with that, he still would have had an alert on his radar scope there to see that. So again, another technical contribution to this. And at the time the jet was converging, that it was converging with, again, the Black Hawk had no ADS-B in capability. So even if the helicopter system had been working, the jet wouldn't have been able to receive that data. So outage on both of those made a difference. And again, in the Swiss cheese model, this represents yet another hole in the technological surveillance layer. And normally this ADS-B acts as an extra set of eyes, giving pilots and controllers a very precise shared picture of the traffic around them. And that's what I mean, I've never had a situation that was anywhere near this close, but I have had alerts, and you before you get a screaming alert, I call it, you'll get images on that, and then you'll get an audible image if you're getting closer, say altitude or climb. It'll call your attention to it. But you have a visual display on what we call the fish finder that gives you precise information. So it allows you to see in your mind a 3D picture of you versus the other aircraft out there. And without it, both airplanes were relying solely on radar, air traffic control instructions, and a visual lookout, all of which were already under strain. The controller was in heavy workload. The pilot, maybe not as much, because all he was doing was adjusting, but he was adjusting to a new runway and the helicopter, and then all of them, of course, when they started having traffic called out to each other. And this technological blind spot didn't cause the accident alone. Okay, sounds familiar, but it removed yet another layer of protection. So now we've got a penetration in up to through 5 layers there. And with other slices like the air traffic control capacity, human performance, and accurate instrumentation already compromised, the absence of this one opened up yet another aligned hole that allowed the aircraft hazard to slip through. Here's something that you might not have thought much about and probably don't have much experience unless you were in the military. Night goggles was something that came along way after I exited the military. And this finding number 6 looks at a human-machine interface issue. And that's the use of these night vision goggles by the Black Hawk crew. They were using them as part of their training protocol so that they could fly under really adverse conditions and low light, blacked out conditions. And they're a tremendous asset in low light environments. Probably all of you have seen some pictures of soldiers in combat using night vision goggles. And of course, now a lot of the movies have used those in telling of their story. And what they do, the downside is their well-known limitations is they narrow the field of view. They alter your depth perception so you can't tell exactly where the airplane is or traffic is in terms of front to back. And it can make it harder to judge distances or relative motion. And in this case, those limitations likely impaired the crew and their ability to maintain an accurate mental picture of this regional jet that was pointed out to them and their trajectory. So this is something that, especially when they got really close, they might have had done better and all that. And the other thing about this is it's designed to operate in low light. So when you have a night landscape, like with all the lights around the DC area and the DC airport, it makes it harder for people wearing these goggles to see traffic. And normally equipment like these night vision goggles would enhance performance without introducing new risk. But here, the limitations in this environment, combined with the workload for both the crews and the controller, the equipment issues, the technology that we've talked about, and the reduced surveillance with the ADS-B, meant that the crew was operating with a compromised visual picture, which is the antithesis of what they needed at that particular thing. It wasn't, again, the only factor, but it was yet another aligned weakness. And now we have 6 holes in the protective layers. And when you combine all these with the inaccurate altimeter, the overloaded air traffic control, the lack of the ADS-B data, it eroded the overall safety net and let this hazard move closer to becoming a reality. And then we get to the final finding, and that is, this one is the one that I anticipated right from the beginning, because they were in a peak amount of traffic recovery at the Dulles or at the Washington National Airport. They had a lot of airplanes out there. The risk is, and they're moving over to this other runway. The risk was that the Black Hawk may have misidentified another aircraft as the incoming jet that they were supposed to be watching for. And when they called traffic in sight, that relieved the controller of any further responsibility for their separation from the American jet. And this kind of error can happen for several reasons. One, visual limitations. You just can't see airplanes as well at night as you do. Another one, workload stress. They're already working to stay down below an altitude below 200 feet. They're trying to navigate visually going down the river. So they've got a focus on other things out there. And then another thing that happened to them, that they had conflicting information from instruments and communications, like the altimeter that was giving them the wrong altitude. And in this case, it meant that their attention and the mental picture that they were focused on the wrong target. And that one just breaks my heart, because when you call an airport or airplated site, everybody obviously thinks that you're going to be able to avoid them. But if you're looking at the wrong airplane, as they may have been that night, this proves to be yet another hole in the Swiss cheese layer of that. And normal visual contact with traffic is a strong safeguard. And that's number one. We have this rule called see and be seen. It doesn't matter whether you're on radar, the controllers are watching you. Your obligation as a pilot, first and foremost, is to see other airplanes and to be seen. That means lighting and operating to maintain vigilance all the time. And it's one of the last lines of defense when technology and procedures are strained like they were in these circumstances. But when the crew locked onto the wrong aircraft, that defense was not existent. And it's important to understand, again, that this wasn't the result of negligence on the part of the helicopter pilots or their lack of skill. It was one of the physical limitations that you get into when you have multiple targets out there at night under those circumstances. And so we can see clearly now what those 7 layers and the failure to protect from both of these crews. It was an outcome of a chain of events. The inaccurate instruments, the reduced ATC capability, the surveillance blind spots, and the human-machine interface limitations that got them in the end. And by the time this final hole opened up, the hazard had already moved through most of the safety layers, and taken together, all 7 findings show us how accidents occur. Multiple small imperfections, and when they align, they lead to a catastrophic event. And that's the power of this model. And this has been in existence since the early 90s. It came into practice during about halfway through my career, and it really profoundly changed the way we did. And when you look back at accidents before and after, there's a profound reduction in accidents, but it's not fail-safe. And that's the real tragedy of this thing here. So what do you take away from this tonight as a fearful flyer? We've seen that the January 29th midair collision over Washington, D.C. was not the result of one bad decision or a single point of failure. It was instead the alignment of multiple small weaknesses in the system, policy gaps, human factors, technical issues, and environmental challenges that normally we can overcome through normal safeguards in our aviation system. But by using this Swiss cheese model, you can see that every single layer has imperfections. That's the strength of looking at risk and risk management this way. And it's unfortunate because we do it better than any other industry out there. Flying is the safest way to travel, but it's always susceptible to errors and mistakes like this. And when they do, as in this case, the outcome is tragic. And it's really important to remember as a fearful flyer that this event was an outlier. And I don't know how you get there, looking at statistics, looking at past news events, looking at how few accidents have occurred in the United States over the past few years. I don't care how you do it, talking to us, talking to Dieter and I. Commercial airline, like I said, it remains the safest way to travel, and it's extraordinarily robust, despite the flaws, despite the gaps, because we do have these multiple independent layers of protection that work quietly in the background on every single flight. And I want you to remember that they're working in the background on every single flight. So when you go from going through security to all the way until you walk out the airport at your destination, know that there are multiple factors that are being employed for your safety each and every step of the way. But this investigation, and the reason I wanted to go through it with you all tonight, it's a powerful reminder that those layers need constant care. And through updated policies, you can vet that I think the first thing they did was they eliminated that route down there, sadly, a little bit too late. But it causes us to update policies, continually look for better technology, continually trying to improve training, and maintaining a proactive risk management attitude. So ultimately, flying safe is about learning, and every accident is a lesson, and each lesson strengthens the system. And hopefully they'll take these findings seriously and address the gaps. But at the same time, we honor those affected by this incident, and we want to see the skies get even safer. So thanks for bearing with me on this. It's been kind of long. I hope it's been interesting. And if you have questions, keep the conversation going about how we can not only improve safety, but how we can improve your appreciation for safety. Okay.
All right, Ron, we got a couple of comments and a question. So first one is great analysis, and I guess the takeaway is it's a lot safer to fly than to drive, and that is absolutely true.
For sure.
For sure. The next thing was a comment relating back to Sonia and you going through yeah, the pre-boarding with the medical condition, and Tracy said she's used it many times and she's never heard a no, right? She's never been refused. So that's good to know as well. And lastly, you may remember Arturo, who came to one of our 101 classes in Burbank, and he says he's a little hard on himself. He says unfortunately he wasn't disciplined or smart enough to stay engaged. His fear is what we call cliffrophobia, which is being enclosed and with no way out, which is a little bit different from claustrophobia. And what he wants to know is, do we have someone who and I'm gonna say this to you, who might have gone through that we could invite on the show. So he would be curious to learn from someone who had or has claustrophobia, and how they got through it. And I also gave him the 15-minute free coaching link to schedule a call with you. Off the top of my head, I don't remember who we could invite, but we'll think about and reach out to a couple people, Arturo, and we'll let you guys know when we have a guest who dealt with that particular. I'm thinking of someone. I don't remember her name right now. So anyway,
Yeah.
That's from the audience, and
Okay.
yeah.
And we do. The reason that I had Stephen last week and the reason we had Sonia tonight is we want to provide people who are out there doing the work. And Sonia, I think she said to me, if she's still listening, she can chime in. But I think we first met 21 years ago. And the reason that she made the mistake of checking in with me, and I said, "Oh, how would you like to be on the show?" Because I like to have a variety of people on, people who are going through it, people that are getting ready to go through it, and people have been through it some time ago. And Sonia fit that last category. And to show you that it is possible. It is possible. Most of you out there want to know, not only can you do this, but can you do it and it continually gets better? And Sonia's living proof of that. So, it's really important to have people on there. One of my favorite guests of all time was Glenn, who was a passenger on Sully's flight. And we try to find people like that. It's difficult, but anyway, if you're out there and you want to be a guest on the show and talk about your particular circumstance or experiences, we welcome that. And many people know that if you send me a text or you call me or something and you got a flight coming up and I respond to you, you get a ringside seat there on my list of people that I would love to talk to afterwards to see how it goes. So we really appreciate that. So as we wrap up today's show, gosh, I looked at my watch. I felt terrible. I don't think I've ever talked this long, but I hope it's been interesting. If it is, we'd love feedback on that. If I need to shut up, I could have done a whole show on this, but I just wanted to be a little more timely on the accident here, because that really did ruin a lot of the harmony that people had developed for flying there. So I want to say thanks to all of you every week, the ones of you that do show up, the ones of you that look at the replays. And whether you're here because you're afraid to fly or you're supporting someone else, or you're just fascinated by the world of aviation, being here really matters to Dieter and I. And it means you're not standing still, you're moving forward. And as long as you keep moving forward, you're going to get better. And if you stick with us and you find it interesting, you come on the 21st, we're going to talk a lot about how memory shapes your fear and things that you can do about it. That's what we're into. We're not into things that you can't control. I really want to remind you, you're not broken, you're not alone, and you're not stuck. You can reframe your experience. You can change the story that you tell yourself. and we're here to help you walk that path. So if it inspires something in you and you're not a member of the Birds of Feather, please consider joining that. And again, remember to come and join us on the 21st. If you can, you'll be getting an email from us with a special offer to make that less painful financially if you want to. And I'm going to extend that, assuming Sonia is still there. Thank you once again, Sonia, for your time. This was a long one. I hope you got something out of it beyond. We got something out of you, so I really want to thank you.
I appreciate it. And if anybody needs to contact me, just go to Capt Ron, and I will be more than happy to talk with somebody or even get a cup of coffee if you're in the Valley.
Thanks, Sonia.
Right,
thanks, Dieter, again for helping me keep this technological ship afloat. And thanks to all of you for joining us tonight. This is the end of tonight's episode. We'll see you again next week on Fearless Flight Live. Bye-bye, everybody. Have a great week.
Good night, everybody.